I'm going to start off with some statistics, and they go like this. According to New York City Public School Parents, which is a little organization within parents and what they feel about New York City Public Schools, 93% of New Yorkers do not approve of Mayor Bloomberg's handlings of New York City Public Schools. 92% do not believe it's right that he's closing down schools, and 91% do not believe that he should continue having control over New York City Public Schools. Mayor Bloomberg has not kept his promise and is accountable for all the harm public schools are going through right now, along with the poor student performances and waste of our money invested in our education system. The affirmative stands strong on the side of these New Yorkers and claim that New York State legislators should return the control of the New York City public school system over to the Board of Education. What do I mean by education? Education is our students' future, the prerequisite our children need to have before entering college. The time spent on our kids to find themselves and plan for their future and our future. And what has kept us from achieving this? Well, look, I'll explain the harms. The first harm I have here is under Mayor Bloomberg's administration, too many public schools have been shutting down. According to New York City Communities for Change, who did a study on this harm, state that under Mayor Bloomberg's administration, 117 New York City public schools were closed over the past decade, claiming that the schools were too dysfunctional to improve. So in other words, he demanded control over schools, and then once he got the power, he claims that there was nothing he can do, so we should waste money and start over. Good job. The studies also state that graduation rates have improved because of the replacement of dysfunctional schools. Let's look at these graduation rates. There are no records right now of high-need students attending the new schools, which means, well, let me give you an example. 14% of Morris High School's students were high-need students, which means that they were like in special education, they were overage, and they seriously needed help with education. Well, Morris High School was shut down, and the school that replaced it, out of the 14%, only 2% of these high-need students were popped up. Now, where are the other 12%? Mayor Bloomberg has yet to release data on this loss percentage. The New York Times also claims that the city plans on closing 33 more schools and then reopening them. What's the point in that except wasting money, time, and our education for our students? The second harm is the educational standards. New York State has provided evidence, as in statistics, that test standards of these New York City students are low. In their showings, they provide a slide in the state's presentation showing that 8th graders who score a level 3 on the math test have a low chance of getting a math region score that will lead to success in college. Meaning that the standards to passing these exams have lowered, and this is what Bloomberg calls improvements because everybody seems to pass these exams. The third harm would be waste of money. In an article, it was said that Bloomberg increased the amount of money spent on an education budget from $12.5 billion to $21 billion. And it was also stated in this article that much of this money was on no bid contracts that never really made it big time news. However, they were mentioned by legislators in articles. Another thing under this, Bloomberg proposed this year to improve education by giving teachers bonuses in 2009. Well, he proposed it this year, but in 2009, it was told in the New York Times that it didn't help the teachers improve performances to help the students in classrooms. And also, the shutting down and rebuilding schools is also a waste of money. So that's that. The cause of all these problems is, in fact, the fact that Mayor Bloomberg has control over these New York City public schools. Today, I have all the right to point fingers towards him because during his inaugural, his biggest hit to gain mayoral control over New York City public schools was the power of accountability. He stated that if anyone was to blame for the failures of New York City public schools under this mayoral control, it would be him to blame. According to law, he has all the power with the consideration of others to maintain our public schools. So who calls for shutting down the schools and wasting our money? Bloomberg. So what can we do about it? Who can be more effective in listening to these parents that are so concerned with their children? district legislators, city councils, and more importantly, community school district boards. In fact, that will be their #1 priority because that's what they're there for. And who's to say that Bloomberg can top that off? He has the economy to worry about, crime rates, urban development, and campaigning for his next election. I mean, just because Obama's president doesn't mean we let him decide our everyday lives. It's the community's responsibility to take action. The Board of Education should receive their power over New York City public schools again because they're the closest to our community, to our parents, to our children, and to our future. So the affirmative stands that New York State legislators should return the control of New York City public school systems over to the Board of Education.
Thank you. Time on that?
Okay.
6 minutes?
No, she had an extra 20 seconds.
Good, that's fine. Okay, negative cross, please.
Okay, what would the Board of Education do that the mayor isn't doing?
Well, he would have more contact with the students themselves and more, because right now, what do they have? They have the public hearings where parents attend and Bloomberg listens to their suggestions and their complaints, but what's he really doing to them? You know, I was told before by a legislator that they don't really do much. He just ignores it.
Thank you for answering that question.
You're
Are
welcome.
you aware of the reason as to why the Board of Education no longer has the power?
Yes, because I believe in the late 1970s, Mayor Lindsay said that there was too much corruption back in the old Board of Education.
Yes.
And that he felt that centralizing the whole school system would be a whole lot better.
Okay, so you did state that they did have corruption back then. So why would we give the power back to them if they lost the power because of this corruption?
Well, that was back in 1970s. It's
Okay.
2012. I don't think we have the same government we do then that we do now.
Okay. So what is the reason for these school closings? You mentioned that he is responsible for it. Are you aware of the reasons?
Yeah, because they're too dysfunctional, he states.
Okay, would you rather to leave them open and let it fail, or would you prefer for it to close and let's rebuild or something like that?
Well, I wouldn't prefer to let it fail. I would prefer to leave them open, save money, and try to improve within the school instead of just shutting it completely down and starting from anew when we're already going through so much as New Yorkers ourselves.
Okay, so what has the mayor done for you to believe that the control needs to be taken away from him, other than public school closings and stuff like that?
Well, again, our students aren't doing as well as they should be. He did promise a whole lot. One of the promises I didn't state it, but I'll state it now, was improving the educational levels in New York, in our students, which he hasn't really done. I mean, if he has, okay, well, he has, but by a very small percentage, and it's been over a decade now, I believe. So no, it's been a decade. So.
Okay, so what you're saying to me is that it's smart to take the power away from the mayor and give it back to the Board of Ed, who previously lost the control.
Over 30 years ago.
Okay, so how do you know that they're not going to make the same mistakes? What is the difference from now and 30 years ago?
The people who are in office today are not the ones who were in office back then.
Okay, so who would take the place? What people? Who specifically?
Okay, well, back then, before time runs out, if I can find it here. All right. Back then, it was the own community school districts that had the power over New York City public schools. However, I'll get back to that later.
That seemed like a long 3 minutes.
Yeah, it seemed really long.
I can sit down, right?
Yep, you can sit down.